What if I told you? The most important Epstein documents were never hidden, they were delayed. Most people think the Epstein story is already finished. They think it's just about a rich man, a private island, and powerful friends. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. Because the Epstein files do not prove a global conspiracy. What they expose is something much more dangerous: how systems quietly protect abuse, how accountability disappears, and how the truth gets buried without anyone needing to say a word. Tonight, I'm not here to shock you, I'm here to show you what the files actually reveal, and why that should worry everyone. Part 1. Who Jeffrey Epstein really was. Beyond the headlines, Jeffrey Epstein was not a celebrity. He was not a politician. He was not a genius investor. He was a middleman. Epstein's real power didn't come from wealth alone, it came from access. He positioned himself between money and influence, power and secrecy, victims and silence. He didn't need to control powerful people. He only needed to be useful to them. That distinction changes everything. What people must understand about the Epstein files: when people hear Epstein files, they imagine a secret list, names that prove guilt, a single document that exposes everyone. That's not how these files work. The Epstein files are court records, depositions, emails, settlements, testimonies, released over many years through civil cases. They do not automatically prove crimes. They show who was mentioned, who was contacted, who was present, who avoided scrutiny, and that difference matters legally and morally. Part 3. The most disturbing fact: the 2008 deal. One of the least discussed but most important facts is how Epstein avoided prison the first time. In 2008, Epstein received a non-prosecution agreement so unusual that federal prosecutors agreed not to charge him as alleged co-conspirators were also protected. Victims were not informed, which violated the law. This wasn't a loophole. It was an exception created for one man. That deal sent a message. Not just to Epstein, but to every victim: this system may not be on your side. Part 4. The role of silence, not conspiracy. There is no proven evidence of a single coordinated global cover-up. What the files show instead is something quieter and more realistic: lawyers doing their job aggressively, institutions protecting reputations, media hesitating without airtight proof, victims being intimidated legally, not violently. No secret meeting was required. The system worked exactly as it was designed to. Part 5. What the documents really reveal. When you read the files carefully, 3 patterns emerge. 1. Repetition of access. Epstein moved freely in elite spaces with almost no oversight. 2. Normalization of warning signs. People notice things. Young girls, unusual behavior, but dismiss them. 3. Legal distance. Many powerful individuals ensured interactions were informal, unrecorded, plausibly deniable. The files don't scream guilt. They whisper negligence. Part 6. The question no one answers. After Epstein's arrest in 2019, one question became unavoidable: why did it take so long? The answer isn't hidden in one name or one document. It's in deferred investigations, jurisdictional confusion, prosecutorial discretion, fear of reputational damage. Justice didn't fail once. It failed repeatedly, quietly, and legally. Part 7. Epstein's death. What we can and cannot say. What is factually known: Epstein died in federal custody. The facility had failures in protocol. Surveillance issues were reported. What is not proven: murder. External involvement. The U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, is continuing an enormous review of case files related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Over 5.2 million documents are now being reviewed by the DOJ, an increase from previous counts. More than 400 attorneys are working on this review, but a full public release is still weeks past the legal deadline. The DOJ expects to release new material around January 20 to 21, 2026. This means the Epstein case is not closed. It's ongoing at the federal level, with potentially explosive information still hidden. Public pressure and watchdog scrutiny. Victims, lawmakers, and watchdog groups are demanding faster and more complete disclosure of the files. There are calls for internal reviews and investigations into why the DOJ is delayed in redacting content heavily. So far, only a small fraction of the Epstein files have been made public. Roughly 12,285 documents, 125,575 pages, have been released. This is less than 1% of what should be disclosed under law. Many documents are heavily redacted, making them difficult to interpret. Critics argue that key substantive details, especially victim statements, interview transcripts, and unredacted evidence, have not yet been released, even though the Transparency Act mandated full disclosure. Epstein's death records included some files include previously unseen details related to Epstein's death in federal custody. But nothing so far has overturned the official ruling of suicide. The newly available records surround protocols, guard logs, and other jailhouse documentation. Grand jury transcripts released. A federal judge in Florida ordered the release of grand jury transcripts from abandoned investigations related to Epstein's trafficking cases. These could offer insights into what prosecutors were investigating, what evidence grand jurors saw, and why some charges were dropped or targets were not pursued. The Epstein saga is influencing politics and public discourse. The case is resurfacing in the context of the 2026 U.S. midterm elections, becoming a talking point across party lines. There's also cultural controversy. High-profile figures, previously connected to Epstein, are publicly responding or apologizing for their past associations, including British politician Peter Mandelson. Epstein's brother claims new autopsy report will show murder. Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, has publicly suggested that a new autopsy report expected in February 2026 will prove Epstein was murdered, not a suicide. This claim references alleged inconsistencies in the official autopsy and is being pushed in media interviews, but it has not been validated by law enforcement or independent forensic authorities. Virginia Giuffre's memoir, Nobody's Girl, has become a bestseller, reigniting public interest in Epstein's trafficking network through her first-hand account of abuse and advocacy work. Her narrative continues to shape how the story is discussed and understood in media and public debate. Redactions and missing files. At least 16 files that briefly appeared on the DOJ site disappeared without explanation, including photos and documents that contained real faces and information. These disappearing files have sparked public debate about what is being withheld and why, and they're being used as a hook for transparency concerns. New images and historical tips. Among some of the released material, photos linked to Epstein's properties and travel documents suggesting FBI was tipped off about Epstein's behavior as early as the 1990s, long before his later arrests, including complaints to investigators in 1996 about abuse. This gives an important new angle. The federal response may have lagged shockingly early in the timeline, which is a far more systemic issue than just what happened in the 2000s or 2019s. Not a conspiracy, but a transparency crisis. Millions of pages exist but most are unreleased. Some documents were briefly published but then removed, without explanation. Lawmakers now say the DOJ is legally failing to comply. And one oversight. Early tips about Epstein's crimes go back decades, suggesting possible systemic inaction. The real story isn't finished, and what's coming next could change everything.